Let's be honest here for a moment. Most social medias around RuneScape have been very critical and negative about the game and its direction, and I will be the first one to put my hands up and say that I'm definitely a part of it, as the future of RuneScape wasn't looking too good, bruv. However, with the recent shift in development to more permanent content updates and RuneFest announcement on the horizon, I thought that now would be a great time to talk about what I would like to see in RuneScape, as you guys have also asked me to do so in the comment sections of my videos. So here are 3 types of updates I would like to see happen in RuneScape 3. And of course, I want to hear which 3 you would like to see happen as well in the comment section down below. Leave a like if you do enjoy the video and subscribe if you're new. Without further ado, let's talk about them. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've been scripting my videos recently. And for this one, I'm not going to be scripting it, as I'm just passionate about these updates and I just want to talk to you guys about them in the old school rambling way. And some of you guys might have heard some of these wishes, so to say, before in previous videos, as I've been quite consistent with things that I want from RuneScape. So if you have, I'm sorry, there are some new things here, but mainly you probably heard some of it before. But one thing that I think you guys heard before, at least if you've been keeping up with social medias, are combat achievements. And even Mod Ryan, a developer on RuneScape, would love to see combat achievements be a thing, and I don't know if they are actively working on it. I have a spidey sense feeling that they kind of are. But if you don't know what combat achievements are a system within old school RuneScape where there are various tiers, and every tier is unlocked by gaining points for completing certain achievements or certain challenges at each boss, varying in difficulty and what you need to do. These tiers are easy, medium, hard, elite, master and grandmaster with respective rewards. I would say most of them don't really apply to RuneScape 3 because, for example, the lower tiers give you extra points at pest control. Like, let's be honest, who does pest control nowadays from RuneScape 3? Or, you know, no prayer drain at barrows. And overall, not too interesting for RuneScape 3. So that would have to be reworked completely and would probably be an entire video on its own. But these tasks apply to things like, speedrunning, so killing a monster in a certain amount of time. Or doing a monster with like certain gear limitations where it can't be more than a certain amount or above a certain tier. So for example, kill in our case Chevalric with only tier 70 gear, and that would be a Grandmaster quest. And you would get points for it, and those points would accumulate to your rank. And if you have all of them, you get this very fancy Zuck helm that you need to complete all of them for, and it's pretty much the biggest flex in old school RuneScape and really shows off that you are very much skilled. But a system like this, with all these different challenges from speedrunning, KC to limitations and whatever else they have, could be such a breath of fresh air within RuneScape 3. Because one, you don't really need to add new content to it. You just need to think of like a bunch of interesting and fun challenges that you can add to a combat achievement system. And I know that PvMe already has a system like that. So you could even go chat to them and be like, hey, you know, we want to implement this system. What are the ones that you guys have? And maybe tweak it here and there, because I would assume that their highest skill ones are maybe a little bit too difficult for people, but who knows? Maybe Grandmaster would require you to do 4K Telos and 4K Arc Laser and certain amount of Enraged Zami as well. It could generally be very, very difficult and very hard to get the highest tier. I wouldn't mind it because we generally need some more difficult content in this game. And this video is not just going to be me talking about old school RuneScape content, but there is just one thing that I think RuneScape 3 does need to do sometimes, as old school RuneScape has done it themselves, where they literally copy-pasted RuneScape 3 content into their game. And you could obviously argue that it makes more sense because RuneScape 3 is the evolved version of old school RuneScape. A lot of the lore's already been laid, like for example with While Gothic Sleeps or whatever else is in RuneScape 3 and going to be in old school RuneScape or already is in old school RuneScape. But I think there are also a lot of things that are old school RuneScape exclusive, like skilling bosses or certain minigames, because technically Guardians of the Rift, which is a runecrafting minigame, is a minigame, but I kind of see it as a skilling boss. Or even something like Forestry and their beautiful, beautiful raids are things that I feel like RuneScape 3 can generally just copy paste and then just tweak to RuneScape 3 standards. Obviously with experience rates and with like everything that's available in RuneScape 3, but the general concept of a lot of these things, like these skilling bosses, the raids, and forestry, can really apply to RuneScape 3 as well. I've been preaching for more skilling bosses ever since Crows came out, because Crows is my favorite boss in the game, and I think overall, of all the skilling bosses that exist in both RuneScape 3, well, 1, and in old school RuneScape, where there's multiple, Croesus is probably the best designed skilling boss where you actually need to do your task instead of just being a part of a big mass. Where there's obviously a way to mass Croesus as well, but I feel like that is just a great design, that it's actually something you need to do, even if it's just on a cycle, where in old school RuneScape, usually you can just join a mass, and if you mess up, it doesn't really matter, or if you do your job, it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't really notice it, is what I'm trying to say. Which is also fine, and has its charm, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with it, and I know, like, a lot of these skilling bosses can also be soloed, where it does matter, and you get either better experience or better rewards, which is all cool and dandy. And I think that's something RuneScape 3 needs to do as well. Because I've been talking about this as well. But give us more active skilling methods, please. Where you actually need to put in effort. And that is actually the best skilling method in the game. And not just slightly better than the AFK one. And skilling bosses could be great for that. Whether that's just because they're good experience and they're high intensity. And give you some rewards. Or, you know, you can also make them very reward heavy. And just experience heavy less. Like, give it less experience. But even something like raids, like the way they do their raids is so much better than RuneScape 3 has done their raid. Because 1, it scales, so you can do it with small groups, big groups, whatever. And 2, they're actually difficult. Obviously, they've been figured out now, but they are usually very difficult when they release. And they take time for people to learn, and they give you some really, really good rewards. And I would just love to see something like Chambers of Xeric or Tombs of a Mascot, which are raid 1 and 3. In RuneScape, in old school RuneScape, in RuneScape 3, where the first one is completely random with like random rooms. There's obviously a set amount of rooms, but randomly generated rooms after each other, kind of like dungeoneering, where it's just boss fights and skilling combined, where if you run out of the supplies you ran in with, you have to make them within the raid, which I think is really, really cool and such a good concept. And with Tombs of a Mascot, it's pretty much Arc Laser on absolute steroids, because you have these things called invocations, pretty much mechanics that you can turn on and off, and the more mechanics you use, the higher and more difficult the raid will be, thus also giving you a higher chance on loot, which is just really cool. And we just need something like that within RuneScape 3 as a good combat challenge that doesn't punish you for going alone or with a friend, but also allows you to go with bigger groups and is scaled properly. And lastly, there's one thing, and this is something that I have not really heard anyone talk about before, but it's an idea that I've had for a little while, especially as someone who's really big on, you know, completion escape stuff, is achievement system rewards. It's kind of like similar to combat achievements, and it might not be a direct update, but I think just updates like combat achievements and an achievement system like how we have Rune Score would be such a great incentive for people to also do different kinds of content. Where I think if you give our achievement system or Rune Score system something more than just a pet that slightly changes, but instead giving, I don't know, buffs to certain things that can help you with completion escape or gym completion escape challenges, it could be really beneficial. Or even just buffs to certain types of pieces of content in general. Because, quite frankly, there's a lot of content in RuneScape where there's just something wrong with it, or there needs some tweaking to be done, or it's just stale or boring, or takes a ridiculous amount of time, like ports, or even player-owned farms. And I think if you can fix it through an update, which is fine, and maybe whatever, but that will probably feel like it's kind of devaluing people's achievements, right? Because yeah, I have grinded out ports completely. I am pretty much nearly done with player-owned farms now. And for everyone who would have done that, they probably would have kind of feel done over if it's suddenly twice as easy. But if you need to work for a buff to make it twice as easy, I think a lot of people are less inclined to be, you know, angry about it and, you know, would maybe champion it a little bit more. And the way I would envision this system is that like certain Rune Score thresholds, you just would unlock a buff. So for example, for player-owned farm, you get like a small buff where you get like a 5 or 10% higher chance of breeding an animal that you haven't gotten on your breeding log yet. It doesn't guarantee it, but it just makes it slightly easier for you to get it. Or with ports, you can make it so that you get a better score. So like just how the building did give you like a 10% increased success rate, maybe getting some rune score gives you 5% as well. Or with the chompy hunting, which you need to do 4,000 of, instead of using these enhancers, you get a buff where, you know, there's maybe a 20% proc chance that you get 2 KC. Or maybe even like a 1% chance that you get triple KC. Who knows? That way you don't have to delete or remove these requirements and can keep them in and not devalue it for other people, but still make it easier for people that need to do it now and make it a bit more convenient, but at the cost of rune score or gaining rune score. And if you have pretty much rewards for every single tier that is actually useful for the average person that has that amount of rune score, then you actually give people the reasons to actually do these more niche challenges and more, you know, weirder things that give you rune score within the game. Because if you're logged in right now and you're listening to the video, because I know you're not watching, click on your achievement tab, which is in your adventures, by the way. Sorry, in your hero. See, I don't even know, because please rework that at some point, because it's just confusing where everything is. Click on your hero tab, go to achievements, and just scroll through it. I bet you there are achievements there that you didn't even know existed in the game, and I think that would be great. Like, for example, there's an achievement to sit on every single bench in RuneScape. Yeah, I guess you didn't know that was a thing. And there are so many of those fun things that have no purpose besides fun stuff, and giving it a purpose and please overall to the entire interface would make it so much more interesting for people to actually hunt it. Of course, there are still people who hunt it now for max rune score and true completionist, but I think it would be great if it actually gives you some benefits as well that help you get more buffs for other things and pretty much keep you playing through just completing achievements and giving like a new path of playing that isn't just completion escape or trim completion escape that are very limited to specific types of content, but gives you a more wider array of things to choose from and to complete within skills and within combat and just within general exploration of the game. And that's pretty much everything. Those are some things that I would really like to see in RuneScape 3. And I want to hear from you. What do you want to see in RuneScape 3? Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Flame my ideas in the comment section down below. And subscribe if you're new. My name's Chevalric. See you guys in my next video.